Welcome, Laura. Welcome to the Evolve podcast. It's so good to have you here this morning with me.
I'm so excited and I absolutely love the name Evolve because that's what I'm all about. So I cannot wait to dive in with you.
Laura, before we delve into getting to know you, your genius, and the amazing gifts that you give the world, I'm going to ask you 5 quick questions about me. How well do you know me? And for every answer that you get right, I'm going to be donating $10 to the Epilepsy Foundation.
Oh, wow. So, I didn't know that.
Yeah, the pressure's really on now.
Okay.
All right. So the first question, whereabouts am I located in Australia?
God.
I love this.
I want to say Perth. I feel like I'm on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
What does Indie Active stand for?
Indie Active.
Or Indie.
Is it after your dog?
That's brilliant. How old am I?
Oh, God. I want to say 24.
Oh, ding, nailed it.
Oh, did I?
Yes. I'm 97,
I'm so competitive.
Good to have you, Laura. Good to have you. What time do I usually wake up?
Oh, 5:30.
What is my star sign?
Libra.
So, Laura,
I know you so well.
I'm
now going to go find all this information.
You are. I'm located on the GC in Burleigh Heads, and Indie stands for Individualized Coaching, but also my goddaughter's name is India. Oh, and yes, I'm 24 and I wake up at 4 a.m. most days, and my star sign is Sagittarius. So first of all, let's give some insight of our relationship and how this is formed. So I have recently just met you in our coaching container with our beautiful coach Krista that everyone always hears me speak about, because we obviously would both speak so highly of her. But when you spoke the other day and you were sharing some insights on who you are and your message, I was so attracted to you. I was like, this woman has got exactly that message that I want to share with others. And, you know, I'm not going to give it away. I want you to be able to share it. But yeah, I just wanted to say, like, your message is so beautiful. And I really hope my listeners hone into what you have to offer and the magic that you do create.
Well, thank you so much for such a great introduction. When I get asked this question, I don't even know where to start because it's been such a long journey. As you know, the healing process is just an unraveling in every element. But when I start back at the beginning, we realize that every parts of the journey just really kind of is integrated along the way. Even because I used to be a personal trainer and working with so many women in this particular space, I realized that even in that specific area, even though I wasn't really aware because it was prior to me doing my psychology degree, it really wasn't just about the body, it was about the mind. So then I was just like, oh, okay, like this isn't actually about what's going on for them. It's about how they're feeling about themselves and how they're thinking about themselves. And then obviously that emotion becomes trapped in the body and cortisol and all of that beautiful stuff, you know. So even back then, you know, I worked in gyms. I knew from a very young age I wanted to be a psychologist because I was really good at listening to people and really good at advising people, as all of us fixers are, you know, back in the day, the people-pleasing fixer that I was. So I knew that trialing through the journey of it, eventually I would step into psychology, and that happened as a mature student. Later on, I think it was early 20s that I actually stepped into that space. And then during my degree is when I became a personal trainer. So knowing and looking back at it was all unraveling beautifully. And then I went into the nutrition space and created a protein bowl that went all through Australia in all of the ASNs and health food stores. And I'm not a chef by any means, but again, it came from a place of I just want to help these women to combat the sugar craving. So I looked at macronutrients and created this amazing protein bowl. But then it got to a point where I was like, okay, I've created this really beautiful business, but my heart still pulls me to psychology. So what do I do? So even in that moment was terrifying for me because the income was great. The flexibility was great. I had a great team of people. And then making that move into an apprentice type position, because I was doing my 4+2 at the time, I felt a big step back in that process. But now stepping into that and the roles that I went into in the prisons and addictions and the psychosis department and working in ED, and then eventually moving up the ladder as a senior psychologist in the mental health unit, what it did is it gave me a really broad picture of people. And I started to do my own research without knowing that I was doing it, because I wasn't in a library, I wasn't looking at research papers, but I started to really see the patterns in people and specifically in the system. And what I was seeing was this revolving door and a lot of band-aiding, if we want to call it, not actual getting to the root of what was going on for these people, allowing them to be seen and heard. There was a lot of judgment, a lot of diagnosis, a lot of labeling. And I felt really uncomfortable with it. At first I got it, but then over time I was like, I feel really uncomfortable at this person, like, you have bipolar. They're just trying to tell the story and they're like, well, yeah, it's because you're manic. They weren't even allowing them to speak, So I'd be in these spaces with the psychiatrists and doctors and nurses, and I was becoming really uncomfortable with what was going on and the patient not being seen and heard and accepted for where they were at. So then I just started to kind of do my own research on trauma. And, the more I actually dug into that, the more I realized it became stored in the body at a cellular level. So then I started to teach this in universities for the midwives and the nurses, the students that were coming into the practice. Because what I realized on the wards and even in addictions, nobody actually knew much about trauma, and we all have it on a spectrum, which I'm sure we'll dive into. But a lot of us, we hear the word trauma and we think, oh, I haven't had that. I haven't been sexually abused or had a severe motor vehicle incident or been in the war but it's actually, it can come in many forms, and a lot of it is emotional neglect. Parents are busy at work when we're younger. They're under-resourced with their own energy, and we get left feeling emotionally neglected, not seen and heard, and having our needs met. So then we detach from ourselves at a very young age. So the more I got to research this, the more I realized that, oh my God, we're not even teaching these people about trauma. So how can they even have awareness around what the triggers are and what their projections are, and really start to own and take responsibility of where they're at in life so they can create change. And my pivotal point was when my body became resistant. So again, the more I was learning about the body, the more I was healing myself. And, radical honesty here, I know I became a psychologist to fix myself through other people, which is pure distraction. But a beautiful journey that I obviously had to unravel onto to help myself and heal myself, to then be able to hold this beautiful space for the people to do the same, because we're, those mirrors. We can only really hold the energy that we hold inside for other people. So I knew intuitively that the more that I worked on my stuff, the more that I would enable other people to work on their stuff, and not just people that I was supporting, but my children, my family, my partners, all of that. And after feeling this resistance of I couldn't go onto the ward anymore, I was like, I don't know what's going on with me. And then the judgment set in of I'm lazy, I don't know what I'm doing. And then I was like, you know what? I just don't feel like it resonates with me anymore. I know I'm passionate about it, but I know there's a different way. And I tried to fight it in the system for a little bit, create these beautiful programs, try to challenge, the upline management. And even though they were really passionate about it, they were very clear on this could take years to implement. And me, I'm just wanting to create change straight away. I want to create a ripple. So I'm like, how can I do that? And I knew that I had to step away from that. I had to shed that identity of psychologist, senior psychologist, team leader in the government, and strip away all of that potential safety, super tax, beautiful wage, and step fully into what I knew was right for me. And this was when I became a holistic psychologist, which was just over like 16 months ago. It feels like a lifetime ago.
Oh my goodness. That is
I know.
like the biggest inspirational journey. And like
Yeah.
going, because it was 15 years that you were a psychologist, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And now you've
Yeah.
moved into this and you've seen it like firsthand. Like
Mm,
it's just not working. It's not working. And
yeah.
with the women that I have previously worked with, that I'm working with now, you know, majority of them, even friends, have all been to or seen at some time or some point in their life a psychologist, and they just feel like a number, where
Yeah.
it's like, you know, they're not actually getting to the root cause, like you said, like the trauma. Like I believe, yes, we all experience trauma, whether it be a big T or a little T trauma, like we all
Yeah. I love
experience it.
that.
But, you know, they're not delving into the energy side of things, and they're buying into the story, which only amplifies the more trauma, right? And then it leaves them feeling
Yes.
more deflated. Yeah. And
Yeah.
something that you said, like, yeah, energy being stored into the body. I love this. Would love for you to delve into it, because it's something that I'm such a strong believer in. But I suppose like that, yes, there's studies, but not necessarily studies from a psychologist, you know, like your point
Yeah.
of view. Like whenever we suppress emotion, it's manifested as physical pain, illness, disease within the body, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think like that's an area where not enough people are aware of. Like people don't even realize we're energy beings and emotions are just energy in motion. Like that's a
Yeah.
huge thing as well that,
Mm.
yeah, I see so much with women.
Yeah, it's so true. And I love that you bring this up because, you know, my mission is to empower people. And when we feel out of control, we are still in that space of victim and blame, you know. And for me, we've been taught for years not to feel our emotions because it's uncomfortable. The mind is a survival organ. So anything uncomfortable that's happening in life right now, whether it's a stressful event at work or your kids just screaming in the house, the brain still thinks that you're being faced with a saber-toothed tiger. It has no idea. So it just goes into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, which are the different areas of survival. And you're not even aware of it. You're just in autopilot. You have created this armor from what has ever happened from you, like from birth all the way up to where you are now. And, you know, at some point it served you, it's created this safety and survival, and you have created a story of that is what's got you to where you are today. What I do is I empower people to know that all of the tools that they need are within them. It's unpacking the emotion by feeling it, releasing it from the body. Like you said, emotion needs to be expressed. It is in motion, energy in motion. If we're not moving that energy, it becomes like a pressure pot in the body. It shows up mentally, physically, and emotionally. You know, and this is the point of it. It's like our body can only store so much. So, you know, like me, for example, like my story was like, I'm this strong, independent woman and I'm not vulnerable and I'm, you know, I don't show emotion. I can crash through walls with my bare fist or whatever story I was telling myself. But I felt so disconnected from myself, and this is how it shows up. It doesn't necessarily mean that you fall into a ball in the corner of the floor eventually. For some of us, it happens that way. But some of us, it's just pure disconnection. It's like, what the hell am I doing here? Like, I just feel so lost. I don't know who I am. And that's because you've disconnected from your emotions. You've disconnected from your emotions. You've pushed them down for way too long, which has then disconnected you from your intuition, which is your inner compass, you know. And I was just speaking to a beautiful client this morning, and she was saying, like, I always knew what I needed to do, but I was too scared, so I ignored it. And now I don't even know if that inner guidance is there anymore. And I'm like, oh, it is. It doesn't go anywhere. We just need to build that muscle again. But for anyone listening, you know, this will be showing up, you know, with symptoms labeled as anxiety and depression, suicidal ideation even, you know, or any form of physical pain. I have this beautiful book that tells you what the pain in the body is associated to emotionally. And every single time, you know, I look at it and I'm like, oh, yes, that's what's going on. Okay, let's feel into that and move it.
Oh my gosh, what's it called?
The body is the barometer of the soul.
I've got one too, and it's
Yes.
the secret language of the body, and I love it.
Yeah.
I refer to it all the time. Like, I'll have my friends being like, "What does this mean?" Or my sister will be like, "What does this one mean?" So I ended up buying my sister this book for her birthday. I'm like, "Here you go."
Yeah, it's so empowering. Like, I've even got my daughter, she's 18. She calls me, she's like, Mom, I've got a headache. Can you tell me what it is? You know, she doesn't go for the Panadol. She really understands that it's her body's way of expressing repressed emotion. And this is the
Amazing.
empowering thing, is like when we feel in physical pain or emotional pain or mental pain, we think we need to fix it. We need a pill, we need a therapy, we need something to fix. But the thing is you don't need fixing. You're not broken. You just need to express it. You need to go into the uncomfortability of it all, where you've never been shown or guided to go, to express it, so then you can have more rational thinking, more logical processing. The mind kicks in a really beautiful way when it's not packed down by heavy emotion. And this is the most important part of it all, is, like I said, empowering you to know that you're in complete control of everything that's going on in your body.
Oh, I love that. And I think something that I've personally learned over the last probably 2 years is anxiety is just the cap of all emotions that we are not willing to express. And when I learned into this and really got to the root cause of certain triggers in my life, once I decided that boundaries were actually not good for my growth because it was hindering what I needed to feel to heal. It allowed me to get to, the core emotions like fear and, those resistant emotions like shame. But what I really struggled with, and I do see this a lot with women, is not only expressing their emotions, but allowing themselves to feel those emotions. Like, I can be so transparent here. I would say I completely snapped off to my emotions, like kinked it like a garden hose, I suppose, any emotions. For me, because at such a young age, I experienced trauma. And then growing up, it's not like I grew up in the most beautiful family, but if it was, if you wanted to express your emotion in sadness or tears or whatever, it was like, if you're going to sulk, go to your room. And it was just like, I need that. Like, as kids, we need that nurturing, right? And even now, as like, as parents, I'm not a parent, as adults, it's like we're reteaching ourselves, and it's about unbecoming to become. And I think like this is such a message as well that needs to get across. It's not necessarily controlling all of our emotions, it's navigating our emotions and regulating our nervous system so that we don't experience such crazy emotions like anxiety, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And these labels that we've been placed upon it, what I find happen, it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like, I've known many people and parents that are like, I just want to know what's wrong with my child. I just want to know what's wrong with her or me. And it's what it is it stops you from blaming yourself. It's the ego. Or, I didn't do anything wrong, it's because he's got ADHD. I didn't do anything wrong, it's because they've got autism. I didn't go, it's all of this stuff. But even when you want your own label and your own diagnosis, I feel it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of getting particular needs met. And again, I have a lot of these conversations with my clients about the letting go process and detachment from this identity they've created, because they've gained a positive from this negative label. And this is where the shift can be really difficult. And it's like, but it's not who you are. And it's like, when they actually take complete radical responsibility and drop under the emotion, build so much awareness around it, they're like, well, actually, when I am anxious and I tell someone I'm anxious, they look after me, they support me, they're there for me. And I'm like, okay, and what do you gain from that? So it's really recognizing when you actually attach to these labels or these physical ailments, there is a form of gaining some positive from it. And that's why it's so difficult to shed. Along with the fact that if you've never been allowed to express emotion, it's like, what does that even look like? Right. It's the unknown then.
And it's the fear of the unknown too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But anyone that I work with, it's like, okay, we're all afraid of the unknown because the mind is a survival organ. It doesn't like to walk into nothingness because it doesn't know how to prepare for your survival. But what do you know to be true? What do you know to be true? And that's what I lean on every single time. Okay, I know that I feel disconnected. I know that I'm not choosing myself right now. I know that I'm not showing up emotionally for my children. I know all of these things. Okay, where do I need to move then if I know that to be true? And it's always into uncomfortability of, okay, I need to choose myself. I need to shed these emotions. I need to give myself alone time. I need to say yes to myself. All of these things that we're not used to doing, but it's always leaning on, okay, well, if you know all of these things to be true, it's a choice then. You're choosing to stay there. So then you can't play that role of victim. Yeah. And you know, this word victim, I say it and it's like every time I say it, actually it makes me cringe because yes, if anything happened to you that was horrific, absolutely it's not okay. And it's, you know, it's not condoned behavior, but it's staying there in the suffering of it. And I'm like, where can we empower you in this? Where are the gifts? Because duality and polarity give you equal amounts of both, you know, and that's what I'm here to do. It's like, you know, this whole prolonging of suffering because of this event or these ongoing events that happened to you that were horrific. But I'm here to empower you past that and show you how you can elevate completely past it with complete gifts.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I resonate with everything that you've said. Everything that you are saying, I align with 110%. Like I have everything happens for a reason tattooed on my arm because I'm such a firm believer. Everything in our reality is here to teach us something or to heal a wound within inside of us, even if we're not sure what it is at the time. Like subconsciously, our behaviors and actions and everything is showing us, you know, what is there for us to lean into to grow. It's our catalyst to our growth. But often, you know, having exactly what you said around the victim, it's often it kind of makes you cringe in a way because you know it can really trigger people, but then that trigger is an opportunity for them to lean into it and move out of that state of like what you said, feeling unempowered because of a situation that's happened to them.
And that comes back to lack of control, you know, staying in this box. And I'm like, you're not here to dim your light. You are here because you are a fucking gift. Yes. And you are meant to shine so bloody bright. But it's flipping the script on that story. It really is. That's keeping you disempowered. That's keeping you feeling out of control in your body. Coming back into how do I trust myself here? How do I feel safe within my own skin again? How do I trust my intuition? What are the signs? What are the synchronicities? How can I say yes in each moment, just taking one step in front of the other? The mind's too busy projecting because it's afraid of failure or it's afraid of judgment or it's afraid of whatever this catastrophe is going to be in the future. And it's like, I have never lived in the future, have you? Because if you have, please let me know how it is. But yeah, we keep projecting all of these stories into the future because that's what the mind does. It wants to prepare for the ultimate that you're not going to die.
Yeah, the ego, right? Such a funny dude.
I know.
I mean, I always say to my girls when they start their coaching journey with me, I'm like, imagine like two angels on your shoulder, like the devil and the angel, and the devil is very much the ego. The ego is going to come up every single time, you know, life might feel too good, it's too good to be true, or you know, when it wants to take you back to what's familiar, like it's going to pipe up then like never before. But if you can be aware of that, then that is already an opportunity for you to expand and grow, like, and be empowered.
Yeah, the awareness is the ultimate key to change. Like you can be aware, like you catch it after the fact, and then eventually you catch it in the moment. And then you get awareness and you still might choose against the awareness, but eventually you get there. You know,
I've been the queen for that.
I just did it the other day. I was at the gym and I haven't trained legs for so long and I was doing deadlifts. And my ego was like, oh God, this hurts. It's uncomfortable. Just do 8 reps, not 10 reps. And I was just like, stop it. And then it would like, I'd be like, we're doing 10. Okay, we're going for a 4th set now because you told me that I've got to stop at 3. We're going for a 4th. And it becomes
so glad that just doesn't happen to me either.
And it becomes this, it's not a battle, because the thing is what I teach people is that the ego isn't a bad thing. It's kept you safe for a very long time. It's befriending the ego and realizing where it's helpful and where it isn't. Because sometimes, you know, when you're walking down a dark alley and your ego's piping up and you're like, oh, it's pretty scary down there, I'd probably listen.
Yeah,
in that moment. But when I'm doing deadlifts and trying to do reps, I'm not listening in that moment. And that's the awareness part. When you can hear the voice, you get a choice in that moment and you choose against it. And then the rewiring starts in the brain, which is the beautiful part of it.
Oh, what's the saying? When two neurons wire together, they fire together.
Yeah, they
Yes.
absolutely do.
I love that. Love that. And something that I also see quite often with women is they bypass their emotions, whether that be through training. Like, I'm just going to go train at the gym and, sweat it out, or I'm going to go have a drink. I see this so often with people suppressing their emotions. Like, if you were to go out on a weekend, majority of the people out there are probably running away from their responsibilities or emotions, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I would love to know, what are some of your useful tips or strategies in actually navigating those emotions or feeling them? I know like screaming to a pillow is a great one, but what is something that's healthy?
Yeah. I just want to add to that as well, because another thing that I find a lot of my female clients do is they'll be aware of it and they'll be like, but that's okay. Because I know, because this is the thing. It's because they're aware of it. They're like, I know, but that's okay, because I know she's really struggling at the moment. That's a bypass, because it still pissed you off. It still triggered something in you. Like, yeah, you can see why they're in that situation, have compassion, but it still triggered something in you for you to have a look at. So I just want to bring that up for any of you beautiful listeners. Like, oh, but that's okay. But anyway, move on with the day, as as women do, because that's what we've been trained to do, is multitask to the nth degree. But really healthy ways of how I guess sink into my emotions is, one, I know how oxytocin works, which is a beautiful, happy hormone for the female. So I know connection is huge for me. Speaking. Women have 6 language centers in both hemispheres. Well, we have 3 in each hemisphere. We literally speak 22,000 words a day. And the way that we actually process emotions and get an understanding is through talking. So all of you women that aren't talking out there, you need to start speaking. Find a friend, call someone up and express it rather than project it onto your partner when he walks into the door. So like talking about it is really great for me, because when I speak to my girlfriends about it, they hold such a beautiful space that I actually process it myself and can get to my own answers, that beautiful bounce, that sounding board. Another way is all about stepping into the femininity. So movement, singing, baths, candles, soft music, just all of that. Infrared saunas, sitting by the ocean with a book. Really surrendering to stillness, which was so difficult for me.
Yeah, came back to that.
Yeah, I was so masculine. I was like, people would be like, how do you never like collapse, Laura? You never stop still. But it's because I didn't want to feel, So when we allow that space for ourselves, not only are we releasing oxytocin in the body, which is the happy hormone, but we're also allowing ourselves to nurture ourselves and our inner children. So yeah, there is that beautiful way of expressing, which you need to do, hitting the pillow, screaming into it, shaking the body somatically, because you're moving from a freeze state into a fight state. Like, even if you just had an argument with a partner, go to your bedroom and just shake yourself off. So your body's not trapping it cellularly. It doesn't have to be these big, vigorous expressions. Like, take yourself for a walk, get out in nature, be present with where you're at. All of that are amazingly nurturing things for your soul, and for you to really start to listen to what it is that you need, tuning into yourself again.
Because the more you trust it, the more it gets stronger, right? Your intuition.
Yeah, my intuition is on fire at the moment.
Same.
I'm
We're
like,
so in sync. It's great. Isn't it wild? You can pick out anything from a mile away, or just know exactly who's about to call or whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the signs then when you create the stillness and space in your mind, which women don't often do, because back in the primal days, which we're primed to do, is like we raise 10 kids and we look after the tribes, and we know where the poisonous berries are in the stream, and we know all of these things because we're constantly collecting data, which means our minds are so busy. But the thing is that when you actually come back into stillness and create that space for your mind, you can actually get a lot of the answers from yourself instead of trying to figuring them out mentally.
Yes, well said. Get into your heart. And I think that's a really big piece for a lot of people. And like, especially myself, over the last few weeks, I spend way too much time in my head, like a ridiculous amount of time in my head. And when I do that, I know that I need to start prioritizing more pleasure and more of the feminine side of myself. So yeah, I'm so glad you threw that in there as well. So one of the other last question for you, Laura, one of the things that I see a lot is medication being used as a strategy for people that are, let's say, depressed or have high anxiety. I would love to get your take around this, because I'm a very passionate and firm believer in healing the body itself, leaning into emotions, doing that work, but would love to get it from your view and your experience being a psychologist to now being a holistic psychologist.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this question. Look, I do feel like there's a time and place for it if it's required, if you're in a really deep hole and you can't see your way out. And, sometimes chemically the brain can really make things difficult. So sometimes you need a bit of a boost. But I wouldn't going past 6 months on any form of medication, just to give you that kick. And then you start the healing process. I've worked with so many people that I've been able to get off medication because it is a numbing agent. It actually stops you from feeling. Wow. And there's all of this beautiful research now that's coming out to state that even, antidepressants that increase serotonin in the brain, it actually shows, and there's been this heaps of research around it, that depression doesn't actually decrease serotonin, but yet we're having all of these SSRIs and SNRIs, prescribed to us, and they're like, for what reason? So it's not actually doing anything. So it's mainly named as a placebo effect. Depression has been linked to stress and overwhelm. So if we can manage the stress and overwhelm in our lives, all of them beautiful hormones and dopamine receptors and all of them things start firing off themselves. So it's more around lifestyle. But again, it's more that we've been taught that we don't have control. We go to the doctor to figure out what's wrong with us. We go to the hospital to get fixed. And going through my own journey since stepping out as a holistic psychologist and actually getting people off medication so they can feel and express themselves in entirety, which is what we are here to do. And then allow themselves to logically and rationally to be able to understand themselves at a deeper level. This is where the magic happens. And because I've seen it, I can experience the fact that medication doesn't have a long-term place. It really doesn't. It's just a numbing agent. Then you have to increase your medication over time. And then on top of that, you've got to add another medication. On top of that, you probably add in alcohol and all of these other ailments, because, your body adapts. It's beautifully adaptive. So it adapts quite quickly. So it's like, absolutely, medication is there, but do your research around it first and foremost to see what medication it is and whether it does have a positive effect on whatever you've been labeled as. If you find it really hard to step into the holistic space, because sound healing, breath work, movement, somatic release, feeling to heal, all of these things are way more profound than any medication that I've ever come across.
Yes. And so much more sustainable, right?
So much more.
Let's not pass on the wounds to the next generation.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, it's the guilt and the shame, and often we're carrying this generational trauma, and then we see ourselves being reactive to our children. And I've been in this space because my daughter's 18 and my son's 4, so I've raised them very differently. The guilt and the shame of what that then carries over, and the judgment of self. But it's just taking radical responsibility, and I can speak into it because I've been in that place of reactivity and not wanting to blame myself, and now flip it and own my emotions fully. So if I've been reactive towards my daughter, I'll take a step back and then I'll own it and be like, hey, babe, that wasn't actually about you. This is what it was about. Yes. Sorry for projecting that onto you. So she doesn't hold that then, and now we have these, and this has been like a couple of year process since I've been on my healing journey, that we have this open connection. But the thing is that I feel like people don't understand is that we see ourselves as the parents and them as the children, and they don't know as much as us and as well as us. And it's like, whoa, you have no idea how tapped in our children are, how in tune they are with energy, how in tune they are with themselves, that we can learn a lot from them.
Oh, totally. They're more tuned in than we are as adults.
So much.
Babies are more than even the kids, right?
Yeah, because we've got all the conditioning. They don't have as much conditioning as us because they haven't traveled 30 years of it. Yes. So to have these conversations, like with my daughter, for example, and I don't take the role as I'm your mom, I'm a human to a human. And we absorb each other as if like we are just completely open and transparent. There's no personalization. We're fully vulnerable. We communicate openly. So many people will be like, do you actually say that to your daughter? I'm like, absolutely, I do. She
Mhm.
lives in this world. What are we safeguarding them from? Why are we instilling fear, rather than strength? But that has come from me doing the work.
Oh my
And
gosh, that to me is a true leader, true leadership.
Yeah. Thanks,
Mm.
beautiful. Thanks.
Oh my gosh, Laura, thank you so much for jumping on and chatting with me. But before I let you go, let the listeners know, where can we find you and your amazing work?
Yes, I would love you guys to connect with me. And if you do jump over to Instagram at Her Successful Mind, make sure you message me and say hello. Like I said, my highest value is connection. So make sure you check in with me. Otherwise, I'm on Facebook as well under Laura Corcoran.
Oh my gosh, amazing. Well, Laura, I'm a firm believer to leave people better than where you found them. And I can tell you now that you've definitely left a lot of listeners better than where you found them. So thank you so much for jumping on.
Thanks, Bree. Thanks so much for having me. So honored.